And then some friends I'd made in Melbourne were involved in triathlons over here. There's a series that happens every summer that's sort of 5 or 6 races. Um, and she was always trying to get me involved in those. But I was very resistant to the cycling component of the triathlons. I didn't want to buy a bike and spend the money and do all that stuff. And so I just used to do them as a team. I either went and participated as the swimmer or the runner in a few team events.
Welcome back to the Agegroup Multisport podcast with me, Richard Conway, and our guest on this episode was Gemma Berry. And as you could probably tell there from that little intro, Gemma is from Australia and she originates from Perth but now lives in Melbourne with a partner and 2 kids. And Gemma reached out through Instagram after I'd put a post out asking for guests and very kindly agreed to come on and share a fantastic story. And we managed, after several months, to get a time and a date sorted out, because Gemma was 11 hours in front of us, I think. So it took a bit of doing. And finally got there. And unfortunately, halfway through it, it was really early for Gemma in the morning. It was not so bad for me, I don't think. 6 o'clock for Gemma, and I think it was 7 o'clock in the evening for me, so not too bad. And I forgot to press record. So we'd been going for about 15 minutes, maybe a bit longer than that, 20 minutes, and it suddenly dawned on me that I hadn't pressed record. Now, in my defence, this is the second time, I think, in how many years? We've been doing this 4 years now, and this is only the second time that I've actually done it and forgotten. And the first time, I didn't record any of it, to be fair, and I didn't even realise till afterwards. And I've never got that guest back on again. I'm still hoping. So I've not done too bad in 4 years, to be fair, just to forget to press that record button. But it happens. But Gemma was so understanding, and we did start again with a few laughs. But so I hope you enjoy Gemma's story. It's so, what's the word? Heartwarming, what she's gone through. Heartfelt, I'm not sure what the word is, but you'll understand when you listen to the story. Like everybody, she's had ups and downs in her life, both personally and members of her family, which we go into. And she's come out the other side, and she's still doing triathlon, which is what she loves to do. Although you wouldn't think so, I guess, from that intro about the bike. So I hope you enjoy Gemma's story. A big thank you for Gemma once again for coming on the pod, putting up with my inadequacies. So that's coming up. Right, what else have we been up to this last fortnight? Training's still going. I'm on week 9 of the Zwift Build Me Up plan, and it's going really well, and the FTP's going in the right direction. Mind you, it should do after all of the sessions that I've been doing on there. And running's going well, staving off any injuries or niggles so far. Really going to focus on getting to that start line at the end of March up at East Fortune in Edinburgh, uninjured and as fit as I can be. It's not going to be anywhere near probably what I need to qualify, but we'll go and enjoy it, and we'll do our best as usual. I've been getting out on the new mountain bike, getting some practice in for the races that are coming up this year, the European and the World Cross Duathlon Championships. So I've been going to a local wood and doing some downhill and climbing and things. So trying to get my technical skills on the bike a bit better, because I think it's quite important. Strength training's carried on, and also giving Mrs. C the support that she needs in her training as well. So it's all going well. And I have a couple of podcasts that I'd like to recommend. And the first one is a Rich Roll podcast, and he has Steve Magnus on as his guest, and the title is Win the Inside Game. And it's all about high performance psychology, busting fitness myths and getting unstuck with elite coaches. So Steve Magnus is a renowned performance expert and author of the book Win the Inside Game, and he's pretty much dedicated his career to examining why we often calcify into patterns that no longer serve us. And when they were talking, they were exploring that our modern obsession with achievement often leads to self-sabotage. And I think basically what they're saying is that, you know, we worry about where we're going to end up, what position we're going to end up and how we're going to do. And that often can be the detriment to how we actually perform. But really good podcast, really enjoyed it. So I would definitely recommend that one. And then the second one is Exercise as Medicine Part 2. And it's on the Nutritional Facts with Dr. Gregor podcast. And basically he's looking at evidence that supports the health benefits of physical activity. It's pretty good. This episode, the second episode in the series, he's looking into whether exercise extends our lifespan or not, or just our health span, and how much exercise is too much. And it was good, enjoyed it. So give that one a listen, and obviously have a listen to Exercise as Medicine Part 1 as well, because that's pretty good. So there's a couple to get your teeth into if you're looking for things to listen to. And then I've got a film that I'm going to recommend. Well, actually, it's not a film, it's a series, and it's on Disney. And it's not the usual one that I'd sit and watch, to be honest, but I was on the Turbo. I've been on the Turbo a lot, as I've already said, and it was something to watch on the Turbo, and it was, I think, a 3-part series, which is on Disney, like I said, and it's called The Arctic Ascent, and it's with Alex Honnold, and he's the guy who did Free Solo, the film about climbing El Capitan in, I think it's Yellowstone Park. But yeah, so he's pretty much leading an expedition to the eastern Greenland, and there's a cliff there which is about 4,000 foot, and I don't think it's been climbed before, and he makes the first ascent of that with an English lady called Hazel Findlay, and so yeah, it was good, really good series. Even if you're not into climbing, just there was a bit of science behind why the ice caps and everything are melting, and even if you're not into climbing, it's cinematically it's fantastic to watch as well. So I recommend that. Give that, if you want something to watch while you're on the Turbo, give that one a watch. And the first race of the season was on over in Abu Dhabi. The 2025 World Triathlon Championship Series started 15th to 16th of February, and it was a good race, and Hayden Wild came out the victor in the men's, with Matty Hauser, the Australian, and Vasco Vilaça, the Portuguese guy, came third. And good race, pretty close. Hayden didn't have all his own way, but just managed to beat Matthew Hauser to the line. But yeah, very good race. And in the ladies, it was a German clean sweep. I think there's only ever been the Norwegian men have done that before. And first across the line for the Germans was Lisa Turch, followed by Nina Eam and then Laura Lindemann. And they were quite clearly in great form, and they took the win by quite a considerable margin. But yeah, a really, really good race there as well. So that was good to watch. Nice to see that the series is back on. Lots of cycling back on also. We've had, I think there was three tours on last week, 3 week race, which kept me entertained while I was on Zwift all those hours. So yeah, it's back up and running. I love cycling, as you know, if you've heard this podcast previously. So really getting our teeth into some cycling on the TV. So all good. Right, so let's get into the main event, and Hope you enjoy Gemma's story, and we shall see you on the other side. Thanks for taking your time out to
That's
join
all
us
right.
today. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of a background on growing up and what you did as a kid.
Sure. Sure. My name is Gemma Berry. I'm a 48-year-old physiotherapist and mother of two children. I live in Geelong in Australia, which is about 1 hour south of Melbourne. I grew up in Perth in Western Australia and was always active. I have two pretty active parents. So I grew up swimming with a very active mum, and my mum was a very good swimmer. She was, as a side note, she was the first female to swim from Perth to Rottnest. If you have any idea of where that is, it's about 20 kilometres off the coast. It's a little
Wow.
island.
Yeah,
That was, I want to say that was in about 1969.
yeah.
And she was training to do the Channel crossing,
Ah,
but her sponsorship fell through when she was at the time of getting ready to go and do that. That was a long time ago. Anyway, so that's swimming.
impressive.
Um, and I also grew up doing gymnastics and trampolining. I was quite heavily involved in. I played hockey because, again, my mum played hockey for Australia, and surf lifesaving.
Cool.
And then once I hit university, I got into powerlifting for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Good mix, like we've already discussed, but a good mix of
Yep,
sports. So how
a
did you
little
get
bit of
into
everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything, which is a good base for your background. How did you get into triathlon?
Yes. Well, I probably started with, I say, learning to run when I was living with a friend in Perth. She decided she wanted to run, so said to me, "Let's go." And we couldn't make a kilometre, but we persevered. And there was a lake near our house that we used to run around that was 3 kilometres. So our big mission was to try and run around the entire lake. And we got there eventually, and I gradually built up till I could get to about 8 kilometres, which felt like just the hardest thing in the entire world. And then I moved over to Melbourne and continued to run a little bit until I ended up running a half marathon. I think it was about 2006, and decided that that was it. That was all I needed to do. I didn't need to do any more than that. And then some friends I'd made in Melbourne were involved in triathlons over here. There's a series that happens every summer that's sort of 5 or 6 races. And she was always trying to get me involved in those, but I was very resistant to the cycling component of the triathlons. I didn't want to buy a bike and spend the money and do all that stuff. And so I just used to do them as a team. I either went and participated as the swimmer or the runner in a few team events. And even though I'd grown up cycling, I used my bike to ride everywhere for transport. I didn't really want to do it as a sport. So I tried to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like you spend a lot of time training, don't you? And for these events, and if you don't like one thing, and I say this quite a lot, you can either now with multisport, there's all sorts of different things, isn't there? There's aquabike,
Mm,
aquathon, duathlon, and obviously triathlon. So there's always things you can drop out if you don't like doing the three.
yep.
I don't know what it's like in Australia because I guess you pretty much swim based. Everybody has got access to the sea or the beach because that's where the
Hmm.
people pretty much live. So it's I guess it's not much of an issue.
With the swimming component or being
Yeah,
able to swim. Look,
yeah,
there's still most people I would say who get into tries, swimming is the thing that they're less
right.
confident about.
Okay.
Um, it doesn't mean that they can't, or a lot of them can swim in a pool but haven't swum in open water.
Yeah.
So even though we've grown up with, surrounded by water,
Mm,
there's still a surprising number of people who really don't feel very confident with
mm.
swimming in open water, especially some of the races. The race we did 2 weeks ago, the winds were 45k an hour and the waves were way up here somewhere. So there were a lot of people who weren't very keen to swim that day.
Yeah. So is the other multi-sports a thing over in Australia then? Do they do duathlons and
They
aquabikes and
do.
aquathons? Yeah.
Not as much. The aqua bikes often tend to be part of just a normal race. So you
Okay.
rock up and you do the swim and the bike and then you finish. You just don't do the run.
Yeah.
Duathlons are standalone and they usually run over our winter
Mm,
when it's too cold to swim.
mm.
But they certainly have them. I've never done any of them. I've only ever done duathlons when our swim gets cancelled because the conditions are too bad, which
Mm.
unfortunately in Melbourne seems to happen quite frequently.
Right.
Um, where Melbourne is on a bay, so whenever it rains a lot, all of the stormwater
Okay.
runs into the bay.
Yeah.
And so if we have a race a day or two after a storm, the bay is deemed not safe to swim in because you get all the crap in there.
Mm.
So they turn our swim into a beach run, which is horrendous.
Yeah.
So you're trying to sprint a kilometre on soft sand and then do the rest of your race,
Yeah.
which I don't like at all. I'd much rather swim.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely there is duathlon, etc. But it's not something. In my mind, I'm a triathlete and I want to do all three sports.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough.
So
Yeah.
even if I don't particularly enjoy the cycling, I still want to do all three.
Yeah. So how did you progress then? What you said you didn't want to do, you didn't start off doing all three. You did either the swim or the
Yep.
run within the team. How did you
Yep.
get your mind into, yeah, go on, I'll try a try then?
It ended up I got a better bike, which is what it came down to. So I'd been riding a mountain bike everywhere, which mountain bikes are obviously hard work and not very fast.
Mm.
I ended up getting a flat bar road bike to copy my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, so that we could commute to work a bit more comfortably because we'd moved house and were living further away from where we worked. And I worked out how much nicer it was to ride on a better bike.
Mm.
So I decided that I would try a try. So I went and did one of the series races
Mm.
as a first timer. They have a first timer category, and I won my race. So I
Wow.
think that
Good start.
kind of yeah, I think that kind of motivated me in the sport. So then I decided to have a go. So I did a season on my flat bar road bike, but really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the challenge,
Yeah.
enjoyed the mixture of the sports. So I got into it from there. Um, yeah, I did a couple of seasons. I got myself a road bike when my husband and I were over in America.
And did you get that shipped
Um,
across then? You bought it in America?
yeah, I just put it in a box and brought it on the plane with me as luggage. So
Wow.
it was much cheaper to buy over there than it was over here in Australia.
Wow.
I don't know what your markups are like in the UK, but everything in Australia is sort of twice as expensive as what it is in America, which is
Mm.
a bit annoying. But anyway, so I bought it in America, bought it home. The exchange rate at the time wasn't too horrendous. It was back in 2010.
Mm.
Uh, so then did another season riding a proper road bike and started to sort of really get into the sport and really enjoy it. But then I had children. So 2 years per child, two children. So it was then about 5 years later before I finally came back to the sport. And
Yeah.
that was when I think I really started to embrace it properly.
Yeah. And at that point, did you get a coach, or were you in a club?
I did the first season after children just by myself, getting up at 4:30 in the morning to fit the training sessions in because my boys were still pretty young then, and my husband's a shift worker.
Mm.
So it was a case of I had to be the parent on duty at all times. But really enjoyed it. And so then the next season, which was sort of end of 2017, I think, I got a coach and joined a club just to see if I could, improve any more.
Yeah.
And that certainly worked because
Mm.
once I had a coach, that's when I sort of started getting on the podium on a more regular basis from there. So not that I didn't have a lot to do with the club, just their training sessions didn't really fit in around my family life, but it was at least nice to have the guidance as
Mm.
far as the training plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just to have, like you said, the guidance, but also feedback from other people as well is nice, isn't it? And the support, it's,
Yep.
yeah.
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 One of the
Um,
nicest things is just when you go to a race to have people to chat with and, somewhere to put your bag and
yeah.
have a little bit of a banter about the race before and after. It's always
Mm.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite important. The social aspect, I always think that you've got, like you just said, you've got people around you that, yeah, you can rely on. So,
I was really enjoying it. And as I said, I'd sort of got on the podium a couple of times. So that was really exciting. And then my youngest son, who by then was 4, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, which threw a big spanner in life in general. So that became sort of our sole focus for the next 18 months. He had a couple of surgeries and went through chemotherapy treatment, etc. Um, and I remember going for a run one day, thinking can't see myself ever having the passion to be on a start line again. My whole world had imploded around what was going on with my son. But I did run. I ran so much, and I cried and I ran, but it was it was the way I dealt with it.
Mm.
And so that was sort of our total focus for the next 18 months. But we did decide we wanted to do some fundraising, because you get given so much. You don't sort of realise how much support is out there from charities, organisations, but also just your friends, people who really step up to help you out in the process. So we decided to do something big. So I thought, well, I'll run my first marathon. I didn't feel I could ask people for money if it wasn't something big and momentous. So there were a few of us got together and ran the Great Ocean Road Marathon in 2019. And again, I finished that marathon and went, yep, that's done and dusted. I can tick that one off the list. And we started a little organisation called Rory's Warriors, because my son's name is Rory, against brain cancer. And it was going to be just that one-off fundraising event, doing the run. But it's ended up, we had so much support from our community that it sort of continued, and we're now 7 years down the track and we're still doing fundraising events for Rory's Warriors, and we're up to about 150 or $160,000 we've raised.
Wow.
For pediatric brain cancer research.
Yeah. And do you do all types of different events then, or?
We're sort of, over the last couple of years, our biggest focus has been two things. Was one called Connor's Run, and Connor's Run is organised by the Robert Connor Dawes Foundation, who we give all our money to.
Right.
So they are Australia's largest funder of pediatric brain cancer research, as opposed to adults, because they're different things and they need to be treated and researched differently. And they do a fun run in Melbourne each year. So we sort of really get involved in that and fundraise for that and try and put a team in for that run each year. And the other thing we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years is an afternoon tea, because not everyone wants to run.
Yeah,
so
well, that's it.
This way we can capture people who would like to be involved and like to help and support. And they've been great fun. We have a few guest speakers, we have games, prizes, raffles, auctions, etc. And I think we raised $15,000 at the event we did just last year.
Wow.
So it's all, they're our main two things. And then we've also got some merchandise, jumpers, T-shirts, hats, hoodies, that sort of thing that we've you see around town, which is really cool.
Nice. Yeah, fantastic. And doing those afternoon teas, I guess, involves a lot more of the community than just sporting events, isn't it? It's,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool.
It's nice to mix it up.
Yeah. And you can find all those links on your Instagram page, which I will put in the show notes, so people can see what you're up to. Because I have had a look myself, and it's it's a really, really good cause.
Sadly, pediatric brain cancer is, out of all the research that the medical world has done, it's the one that sort of showed the least progress in 30 years. They haven't made any headway into survival rates or anything like that. And we're very lucky. Our son Rory he's stable. He's not cured, but he's stable. He's been healthy the last couple of years. We have to deal with a lot of side effects. He basically lives with a acquired brain injury, which has a fairly big impact on his energy levels and schooling and emotions, all the bits and pieces that come with that. But he's here with us and he still makes us laugh every day. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, and that's things you've got to cherish, haven't you? It's just And going back to your sporting achievements, all that makes it makes those even more impressive. Actually, what you've gone through over the last. How old is he now? Your son?
He's now 11.
11.
So he was diagnosed May 2018.
Yeah. So all that time that you've dealt with that. I mean, we generally say I'm 57 now. I've got two sons as well, and they're both 28 and 30. So they're well off our hands. We didn't do anything when they were young and growing up. We didn't really do any sport ourselves. It was all directed to those guys. So we're like,
Mm,
I often say, I'm in awe of parents who can actually do sport themselves and put the time in and put time aside. I think it's so
yeah.
impressive for people like yourself who've got family life and other issues to still have that time and that space that you can go off and do amazing things in your own right. You know, it's incredible.
It's definitely challenging, and in my job, as a physio, the number of people who will come to me and say, "Oh, look, I don't really have time to exercise," and I, as politely as I can, call them out on that because that's not true.
It's
you know, we all have time. We all have time. It's what we choose to
yeah,
make of our time. We all have 24 hours a day, and everyone has different things in their life. Everyone's got work or family pressures or external stresses. But how much time do we waste as a population on our phones or sitting in front of the television late at night or sitting in front of the computer late at night but not doing anything constructive when you could go to bed and get up early and go for a walk, go for a run, whatever it is,
mm,
it's whatever tickles your fancy. But I keep saying, I'm trying to teach my kids this. I said, if you want to make it happen, you can make it happen.
mm,
You just have to actually prioritize it
yeah. And like
and
you said,
plan and prepare.
like you rightly said, it's choice.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
not
I
it's
think I
not
was
whether
listening to
you've
one
got
of,
time or you haven't got time. It's because that's
no.
just an excuse. It's choice. Everybody's got the same 24
Yep.
hours in the day. It depends on what
Yep.
you do with that time.
Yeah. I think I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day and you had an older gentleman on and he was talking about, other people his age all complaining about their aches and pains and injuries and medications. And it's so true. That's, the world I live in with the work I do.
Yeah.
And you've got a choice to move your body or you've got a choice not to. And triathlon's one way of doing that,
Mm.
but it doesn't matter. I mean, triathlon, as you would appreciate, we're all a little bit crazy. We like to, try and do three sports rather than one, but it's not just three sports, it's four because you need to add in the strength training
Mm.
and then somehow you need to also factor in recovery. Um, but I'd much rather spend my time putting effort and energy into that than so many other things that don't achieve nearly as much and they don't give you the same personal satisfaction that you get from achieving
Yeah. Yeah.
and
100%.
testing yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And from a lifestyle
Yeah,
point of view, and a longevity point of view, you're going to reap the benefits and the rewards later on down the line. So it's a win-win, but people unfortunately
absolutely.
don't not people don't get it. It's not even just about not even about triathlon. It's about well-being and just doing some physical exercise in general.
Yep,
The amount of people that just
yep.
it's just not on their radar is beyond me. We've got
No,
this fantastic tool of a body that is absolutely amazing, and to see people just abuse it is just it's heartbreaking. Mm.
it is. It's sad. It's really sad. I mean,
And
our
you'll
body
see
is
that more than most
a
people, I guess.
machine. Yeah, look, I do. And it's funny. I did a try yesterday, and it
I
was
saw
just a
that, yeah.
little local one.
Yeah.
But what was so cool about it was I think it had 50% females. So we were talking about there aren't enough females in the
Yeah.
sport, and I'll do anything I can to increase it. Anyway, after I'd finished my event, I went out for a little jog and was catching the tail end of a lot of the earlier the later participants, and there were three girls who were all together, and it was at the 2K mark of the 4K run, and they were walking and shuffling and walking and shuffling, and I ran up next to them. I said, "Come on, girls, we can do this. I'll run with you." And I ran all the way through to the finish line with them that last 2K, and they wanted to walk more than run, but we got them there, and I was like, "You girls are amazing. The fact that you're out here, they'd driven from Horsham, which is a town like 3 or 4 hours away,
Wow.
to come and do this little country try, their first time, and they got out there and they smashed it." I said, "You are absolutely killing this because so many other people wouldn't even have a go."
Mm.
And that's just so cool. I was so loved seeing that they were
Yeah.
just trying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
anything
amazing.
I can do to spur that on is great.
Yeah. And they'll have loved that actually what you did, that act of kindness, you know what I mean, and giving them that support, that'll mean something to them, and hopefully it'll spur them on to go and do more.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. I just said, you've killed this, you've done it. And now you can tick it off and you can go back home and tell everybody how amazing you were.
Yeah,
And that will probably motivate somebody else.
yeah, yeah, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Trying to motivate and inspire. That's pretty much why I started this podcast, actually, to try and motivate and show what actually people of all ages have done and are doing.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love being able to listen to the stories about just normal people, not the professionals and
yeah,
not the people who have sort of, not saying they've had it given to them. They obviously have to work very, very hard, but being a professional in the sport versus being just a regular member of the community that's dealing with all the other stuff that they have to deal with.
mm,
It's great to hear how people battle it and get through,
yeah, and the things
because
that
so
they've
many
gone
others
through as
would.
well. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So many people just throw their hands in the air. I A couple of years ago, I had an onset of an injury, and it was this weird pain that I was getting in my leg, and it started. I remember specifically, it started in January. It was after a race, and I went out to ride my bike. And went, why is my leg so sore? And it gradually progressed, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was just cycling originally, and then it got into running as well. And I would keep getting this sore leg whenever I tried to put in any effort. And I was very lucky that there was another girl I knew in the tri community who'd been going through some weird pain and injury symptoms, and she'd had them for about 3 years. And she put on Instagram one day a post about what was going on. She goes, I think I've got to the cause of my pain. And I read her post and I read her symptoms. I went, that sounds exactly the same as what I'm going through. Anyway, I tell this story because it's really a good one to get out to the triathlon community. I had something called external iliac artery endofibrosis. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. They call it cyclist's artery.
no,
Um, anyway, it's a rare condition, but I suspect it's less rare than people think because it's very poorly diagnosed. But basically, it means one of the arteries in your abdomen fibroses. So it's sort of like getting heart disease, but in your abdominal artery that supplies your leg.
right,
So because the artery fibroses, so it almost collapses. So of course, when you're trying to exercise, your leg needs blood, and the artery collapses, so your leg doesn't get any blood. Which you would know what lactic acid buildup feels
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah,
It's like that, but within like 2 minutes of exercising. And it's worse if you try and run up a hill or run upstairs or ride your bike up a hill. It's much worse. Anyway, the only cure for this condition is surgery, and it's a massive surgery. I think I've got a 50 centimetre scar
wow,
from my tummy down to my thigh. They have to take a vein out of your leg and use it to replace the artery that's failed. That's one of my kids.
yeah,
And that was a week in hospital. I didn't get out of
wow,
bed for 4 days. Like, it was huge. And it was 6 weeks before you could sort of do any type of exercise other than walking. It was, what was it? I think it was 12 weeks before I could go back to the gym. And it was 6 months before I was able to go back to any sport, like
yeah,
proper, felt like I was training. So it's
yeah,
a huge, big deal. And I got through it though. I was
yeah,
sort of like, oh my gosh, will I ever be able to do this again? And even to have the surgery was a big battle. I had to fight with my health insurance company because apparently healthy 48-year-olds aren't supposed to require vascular surgery. Um, so that
yeah,
was another battle in itself. It was either that or pay for it privately, which wasn't really in the means.
mm,
But yeah, to any of your listeners who are out there getting weird single-sided leg pain when they're trying to do efforts,
mm,
look up iliac artery endofibrosis
right,
and find a doctor who will specialise in it,
mm,
because they're professional cyclists that's ended their career because they just didn't get treatment for it.
yeah,
It
wow,
could be quite depressing too.
yeah. Well, I think anything that stops you doing what you would like to do is
Yes,
it. I mean, I've sort of a broken record on this podcast sometimes because
with your injuries.
yeah, yeah, I've like you've heard I've been injured, and we're lucky that we've got two other sports to be able to do when you can't run, because nine times out
Yes,
of ten it's a running injury, isn't it, that we suffer from. So yeah,
yep,
but it can. We've said it in the last few podcasts. It can affect you mentally if you let it. You know.
Yes.
So,
Oh,
but I guess,
absolutely.
but
And
I
I,
guess you
I
couldn't do
think,
anything at all, which was even worse.
oh, I was, I couldn't, I was going through, I kept notes on my condition because I'm putting together a presentation for my, my work about the condition
Yeah.
and just having to remind myself I couldn't put my own socks on for 2 weeks because I couldn't reach my toes. I couldn't sit upright in a chair for 2 weeks. It was too painful. Like just
Wow.
the recovery was incredible. But I was able to get back into the pool, I think, at about week 5 with a pool boy.
Mm.
So I'm very slow, but just grateful for being able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
it's
mean that I
incredible,
think
isn't
that's
it?
one of
Yeah, it's incredible. We take these all these things for granted, and when they're taken away, it's so hard.
yes.
Yeah. So moving on to your try experience, then you said that
Yep.
you'd done 70.3s, um, and you talked a little bit about wanting to qualify um, to represent Australia in your email. So tell us a little bit about that side of it.
Yeah, so I went to Taupo last year for the 70.3 World Championships. I don't particularly like 70.3s. The bike ride's a bit longer than,
Yeah.
than what I'd prefer. But the opportunity to go to a World Championships in the country next door was sort of too good to pass up.
Mm.
It was an amazing experience. My race itself wasn't great, but the whole week over there and Ironman put on a pretty good show. Um, but I think one of the most incredible parts was having a women's only race
Mm.
where there were 2,500 women racing in one day. No men, no egos to deal with on the out on the bike course because you get them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Don't like being
and to
passed
have
by a
the
woman.
oh no, God no, and then they've got to put on a burst and then pull in front of you and slow down.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of cat and mousing on our races normally. So just to have a women's only race was pretty fantastic, and to have the course lined with men who were cheering and supporting
Yeah.
for the women. The other part I think I really liked was the women's race was the day before the men's race, and it was got quite hot both days on the run, and like all the men were cheering for us on the Saturday, and then we were out cheering on the Sunday. And you say, you can do this, especially at that sort of 14K mark of the run when everything feels pretty horrible. And to see them look at you and know that you had been through it too, and if you could do it, then they could do it, was pretty cool,
Mm.
actually.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was a really great experience. But we've got the sprint and standard distance world champs in Wollongong this year, which is in
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and qualify for that. I haven't been to any of the other age group events so far,
Mm.
purely from a family life. My husband's shift work, the kids were young, my son being sick, and finances. It's all just been too hard.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Spain and Abu Dhabi and all those sorts of things are a bit more challenging to get to.
Mm.
So the process here in Australia is you have to earn points, and then at the end of the season, which is the end of April, they go through the table of points, and the top, I think it's 15 or 20 places in each age group are offered a qualifying spot. And you earn points by doing qualifying races. They take your best 3 races if you choose to do more than 3.
Mm.
The biggest part about that is the races. There's sort of 1 in each state in Australia, 2 in Queensland, 2 in New South Wales for each distance. But Australia's a pretty big country, so getting
Mm.
from one race to the next is not quite so simple. Often it's flying, or it's 8 to 10 hours of driving at least.
Yeah.
So that makes it a bit tricky,
Yeah.
but we'll have a go anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from your background and what you've already done, I would imagine that you'll smash it.
Oh, I don't think, without sounding overconfident, I don't think I'll have a problem with qualifying.
Yeah.
I've done the Victorian qualifying race for standard distance. That was 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
The sprint qualifying race is this Sunday coming up. Previously, a few years ago, I think the rules have changed in Australia. When I first looked at it, it used to be a case of if you won a qualifying race, you automatically got a spot.
Yeah.
But they've taken that bit out of it now, so which was a shame because I won the race 2 weeks ago, so I would have got a spot.
Well, you'll have
But
got good
anyway,
points.
Oh, well, I've got my good points. That's right. And then the final race of the summer is the Australian Championships
Mm.
of standard distance. And at that race, they offer double points. And they also offer automatic qualification for the top five places. But of course, you can't kind of rely on the fact that that's going to work for you. So you've got to do something else beforehand.
Yeah. So are you going to go over there and do that race as well?
Yeah, hopefully, because that's one I can drive to.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll get to that race at the end of April and see how that goes. And that,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, will be enough for me to
Yeah.
qualify for standard distance at least,
Cool. Excellent. Would you do
which is
both
my
if you
preferred.
qualified for both?
Maybe I have to look at the timetable and see what days they're on. Because
Yeah.
if they're a day after each other, I'm not sure if that's going to work. If there's a
Yeah.
day in between, then maybe.
Yeah.
Because as you would appreciate, the older you get, the longer it takes you to recover from things.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, good luck with that. I'm sure you
Thanks.
will. I'm sure you will qualify, and I'll look forward to watching on Instagram and seeing how it goes. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it should be good.
like I said, got a friend of mine, teammate Steve, just come
Mm,
back from. He crashed his bike at a triathlon, and he had a broken hip, and he's just well, he
yep,
had other complications as well, blood clots and sorry, lung clots, and he's just getting back into it, and he's qualified to go over to Australia, so he's going to
yep.
be racing there as well.
Good on him.
So
I haven't been to Wollongong before, so it'll
yeah,
be good to go up in April and have a little practice.
yeah,
Um, and I'm just thinking October could be anything. It could be 32 degrees or it could be
right,
pretty cold. So we'll
okay,
find out.
yeah, yeah,
It's sort of before summer starts, but I guess it's capturing the in between seasons of the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere.
yeah. Well, you'll have to keep us up to date with the weather so I can fill him in on what it's going to be like. Give him the
Will
heads up.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
excellent. Well, I'm not going to take too much more of your time up. I've just got
that's
a
all right.
few quick fire questions that I always
Sure.
ask. And the first one is, what's your favourite bit of kit?
I know you always ask this, and everyone says their bike.
You do.
I do love my bike, but I don't actually love riding a bike. So it's definitely not my favourite bit of kit. I was thinking about this. It's probably, even though I grew up a swimmer, my swim, pool buoy, and paddles.
Right.
So my $50 bit of kit, because when you swim with those, oh, you feel like you can, you feel like you're superhuman.
Brilliant. I like that. I don't think anybody's ever done a pull buoy before. Actually, I think that's the first. So well done on getting a first.
Uh,
Um,
oh well, I don't kick when I swim, so a pool buoy really helps me out.
oh yeah, somebody else who doesn't kick when they swim either. I thought it was just
Yeah,
me.
no, no, which is why wetsuit swims are so beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I
Hmm.
suppose over there you're never sure whether it's going to be a wet swim or not, do you?
In Victoria, it's always a
It
wetsuit
is.
swim.
All right. Okay.
Other parts of Australia, not necessarily.
Yeah. Cool. And what
Yeah.
advice would you give anybody wanting to get into triathlon?
You do have to just take the plunge, but at the same time, you can. There's lots of beginner type tries, like the one I did yesterday in Bowen Heads. Very much designed for beginners, short courses, really user friendly. Or another great way to get into tries is do it as a team, because it's
Yeah.
less sort of intimidating worrying about all three components of it, but you still get to become familiar with the sport and familiar with transitions. So I would say do it as a team first,
Yeah.
and then try and find someone who's into tries, or someone who wants to do it with you, because it feels that little bit less scary when you're not doing it by yourself.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant idea. Getting getting in and doing it as a team. I think that's just fabulous, especially maybe with other people that haven't done it either before. Find
Yeah,
somebody who's strong swimmer, strong runner, strong biker, and that's genius. Yeah, I love that.
because it
Um,
always it always helps when you do well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it spurs you on, doesn't it? When you maybe then you want to try and do a whole one yourself, pretty much like you did.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, brilliant. And what
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, what resources do you use for your training or just in general triathlon? And it could be books, could be YouTube, could be anything. What do you use?
Once upon a time, it was books. Probably when I was sort of first more getting into the sport and learning about it. I had a couple. Oh, can't remember what they're called now. They're sitting on the floor in my bedroom.
Mm.
But the like women's half Ironman guide,
Mm.
and there was a women's specific Ironman guide. So I sort of read those and use those to get some training ideas. And now I mostly use Training Peaks.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess, you get bits and pieces off Instagram, other people you see doing things. But I feel like I'm at the point now where I've been in the sport long enough that I've got a reasonable idea of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm lucky enough that I get to use my own knowledge for the strength and recovery component of sort of things.
Of course. Yeah. Brilliant. And then finally, what are your short and your long-term goals?
Is it short or long term? Anyway, Wollongong in October. Not sure if you call that short or long term.
I would say that was quite short.
For standard distance. Yeah, I would say that's quite short
that's
too.
quite short.
I have a long-term goal.
Come on.
I have a long-term goal of doing a marathon in every state in Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, so far I've done Western Australia. I did Perth Marathon. I've done Victoria, the Great Ocean Road Marathon, and I've done Sydney Marathon.
And how many states are there?
Originally it was 7.
Okay.
But the biggest, I think the hardest one's going to be Northern Territory because it doesn't really have its own proper marathon. It's got one in the middle of the outback near Ayers Rock or something. So I'll have to look into that one. But all the other states have plenty to choose from. And now that Sydney Marathon has become one of the world majors, I don't know if you heard about that. So who knows, maybe when my triathlon career wraps up, I'll go into just running marathon world majors. But we'll see how they go.
Yeah, excellent.
Originally, it was going to be one each winter in the off season, but I didn't do one last year because of Taupo, and I probably won't get one in this year if I'm going to Wollongong in October. Yeah. But next year, I'll be back.
You've got plenty of time. Years and years.
Plenty of time.
Years and years.
Yeah, that's right.
Look, it's been absolutely lovely to speak to you and hear your story.
Thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate that.
And good luck with everything.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
Yeah, and you. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Well, a big thank you to Gemma once again for taking her time out from the other side of the world to come on the podcast and share that fantastic story. Ups and downs, both personally and within her family, as we heard, and she's got through it, and she continues to do what she loves, and that's do triathlon. And good luck to Gemma in the future. We'll be watching on Instagram how she progresses, and I hope she gets to race for the Australian team this year, or up there, down there in Wollongong, and all the best. That's about it for this episode. So thank you once again for taking your time out to listen. And if you would like to come on the podcast, if you're an age grouper yourself, and or you know somebody who's got a great story, please tell them to get in touch. As Gemma did, you can find us on Instagram at amp_1967. We're on Facebook at AmpGB, and we've got our own YouTube channel, which is AmpGB also. Our email address, if you want to drop us an email, is agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com. So, hope your training is going well, and if you're racing anytime soon, I hope you're ready. And we shall see you next time. Don't forget, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.